Chapter 5.
Alright. Look at that. One nation under GAD. G-A-D. All men are created equal. That's true, Brother Washington. All Freemasons come together as equals. All Freemasons come together as equals, says Mr. Franklin. Be quite symbolic, he says. I keep forgetting to post that video. I'll post it on the Telegram probably, if I can remember. So you can have the audio too. I'm trying to avoid whatever they use to delete that video, so with its actual audio, sometimes sped up for certain purposes, I'll post that on Telegram if I can remember. So let's see here. Everything's set in order. I noticed something very interesting today. Well, just right now that I want to show. But actually, let me go over this first. See how you have like stepdads or stepmoms, stepsisters, this and that. I was thinking, that's interesting. And a lot of these royal families and royal bloodlines that were exiled to the colonies in South Africa and Australia, like I say many, many times, and other areas too. Sometimes islands and stuff. So, then you get Jamaica. But anyway, when I thought of like step family, I thought of the Eurasian steppe, which is steppe, S-T-E-P-P-E. So it has a pe at the end. It's literally the mouth of the steppe. It would literally be the division between the division of good and evil and the mark and the testimony of two mouths. That's that double-headed black eagle of the Romanovs. You can go look it up. So if you Hebraize steppe, the Eurasian steppe, not S-T-E-P, but with the extra P-E at the end, then voila, you have the Romanovs. And I have this very, very, very crude map. So anybody who understands maps, please don't laugh at it. That's the Eurasian steppe. Russia, I think you go up the Eurasian steppe to invade Russia, and Russia goes down to invade you. That's a very, very, very good upper hand, isn't it? And other nations have to use that in conquests, certain nations. If they so choose, if they don't want to go through the desert. But, you know, if you try to go south of the Caspian Sea, start running into really big mountains. So, just look up history and geography. And I thought, because the Romanovs are like that, and these Soviets are where I've talked about, I'll have to repeat things. People need to watch past videos if they don't know what I'm speaking of by this point. Soviets, Soviets, oy vey, yods. And I'm giving these short words out sometimes for people who actually take my advice. Go look up the Hebrew with your Obama phone if you're a homeless person. There's no excuse. and you look it up. So I give you the bits and pieces and connect it for you because it's so big I can't do it myself. I have to just give out the pieces so you can do the rest. It would be very, very mentally exhausting and boring if I went through everything. So uh, then I thought of my own name. It was funny. Like Steven is step, not with the PE though. It's step and Han is grace. So like a in-law, I could be a graceful in-law. That means that my name could even suggest somebody who can be family with anybody naturally. Like in the flesh, it's easier to be family with anybody. And that describes basically my whole life. So that's very interesting. So I think I'm onto something. And good old Shakespeare. Good old Shakespeare. He did me a favor. Technically, I always give glory to Elion. It's the infodimensional. These people sometimes get glimpses of it in various ways, and then they write things. They get glimpses. You can get glimpses of it through creation. Some people don't believe that because it terrifies them. They see their doom. People who see their doom in creation say that you can't get truth from creation. It's like, huh, what are you afraid of? You see your doom in creation? You see like bugs getting, like spiders getting squished, and you're like, oh, that can't be real. You scared of the broom? Scared of getting swept away? Okay, so I thought that was interesting. Step Han. um, they're like Hispanics would be like Estepan. They even say Estepan. You know, stephan. So like a stepson, step grace, basically. You're gonna just, that's pretty cool. So old Shakespeare helped me out here, and maybe you can find this yourself if you can't see it. It says it's front piece and title page of one of the most famous books in the Renaissance, the 1623 first folio of the plays of William Shakespeare. The portrait by Martin Droeshout, Droeshout, was not made from life, and yet it has fixed the public sense of Shakespeare's appearance. They claim that, but if you look at his features, that's how I would imagine Shakespeare. The way his skull is they make it like a cop and give him certain Semitic features. So there he is right there. I've seen that face before. That's where that song comes from, where he's like, I know you walked with you once upon a dream. But they do it with like a princess and a prince. But this can be multiple people that they look familiar because that phenotype is familiar. And over here, it has something that if you can find this picture online, you should read it because it's in Old English. Not Old English, but the letters that they use for pronunciation are Old English letters. So it says, this figure that thou here seest put, it's really hard to read it because the S's are F's. Literally. I'll show you in a second. It was for gentle Shakespeare cut, wherein the grower had a what is that one? Strice with nature to outdo the life. Oh, could he? Oh, it's a type of F too. The F. So you have to know the F as an S sound by how they draw the F for an F sound. Isn't that really interesting? Oh, could he but have drawn his wit as well in brass, and it looks like braffy, literally, but it's as well in brass as he hath hit his face, the print would then surpass It literally looks like Furpathic or Furpathy, but it's actually Shapas. All that was ever writ in brass, but since he cannot, reader, look, not on his picture, but his book. It's a kind of, it seems kind of blasphemous. Like they're trying to say he's God or something. You can't actually see his face, just read his book. No, I think that actually is his face. I would believe Shakespeare to look like that. But anyway, there's many reasons. So when I saw that, and I'm like, man, this is very hard to read, but I had already known from a past video I saw that that F meant an S sound. I just never made this current connection that I'm about to tell you. So if it's like a weird like wavy F too. So if you see like an F that's like this type of fancier way, and then the two F's are two S's. And there underneath the two S's is the German S set. So an S set means two S's in German. So when you draw that little sign right there, and it could be in your phone too. When you type, you can change the symbols. There's an S set in there. So then I thought that means possibly, because remember, these Soviets are trying to hide their names. They're trying to hide all kinds of things. So I started thinking of S names that would sound very, very interesting if the S was an F. So I had Serrano is Ferrano. That's a lot more interesting than Serrano. And Saran means Lord. And I think Aramaic or an Arabic, a Proto-Arabic, because they claim in the study Bible I had that the word Saran means Lord in Philistine. So Philistines were speaking Arabic, like a Proto-Arabic or an Aramaic, what do they call it, dialect. And so Saran to them meant Lord, which is probably what they would call Pharaoh when they worked for him or did business with him. So Serrano being Ferrano makes a lot of sense, doesn't it? Will Ferrell can be Will Cyril. Cyril. So you see how they can even mask their name with a C? See, if you just search language and stuff like that, these people can't hide from you. I can see all the Soviets. That would make a Soviet a Coviet or a Foviet. Coviet? If you made the S into, it's still Soviet, but with a C, you could say Coviet. You know what I'm saying, what I'm thinking it sounds like. Hopefully you're thinking the same thing. So, and then I thought Susan, Fusan, Fuchsia. The name Fuchsia is probably very similar to Susan, etymologically. So, Fusan, fusion. So fusion, in science, you can already see it's like a sixer type thing, because shush, remember, is 6, but also white. So it's white magic. But Zana is harlotry, but it's white harlotry. So I try to tell people about white hair phenomenons coming from certain bloodlines, but that's just interesting. Fushan, Suzanne, Kushan. You see how they can hide it in letters? We have the S and the C, and then the P's. Remember, the P's are also F's. Can be F's. So S can be Pe. That's why it's Pharaoh. Because of PH. PhD. You understand? Trying to. Yeah, I mean, this is wild. So now you can go around. China can now be Sina. This is proving it right now. Finna. I'm finna get paid right now. You understand why going? They're turning the word for going for motion. You know how Obama says forward? How they say progressives? Hitler said forward. Uh, that's not a bad thing to say necessarily. You're moving forward, but they're kind of sino, thornbush, sharpening. Kate. English used to call it Kathy. That's purity. That's white. See how it's sixer again? Billy Graham got his wife from China. Did you know that? Born in China. She looks like her family is Mormon. Her phenotype is Mormon. Billy Graham's wife's phenotype is Mormon. When you, especially her younger pictures. He got her from China, according to his own book. Blasphemously called Just As I Am. He's not saying like the song, like the actual really beautiful song. He's saying he is just as I am. Do you understand? William Graham. Do you understand that he's not actually Scottish? He probably has relatives that if they saw those kilts, it'd give him a Caesar. Because those kilts, a lot of their designs can fool AI hundreds of years before they even developed it. Isn't that something? That's very, very... And the mentality of if you wear this and you're not related to us, there's going to be a big, big problem. I understand why people do this. It's because somebody keeps trying to come in, pretend to be their family, and then go, hey, what are you working on there? That's a very interesting invention. Steam power, you say? So I saw this. Let me just pull all these out. Because I'm trying to get to this book. That's my struggle. Is like having any interest in this freaking book. Because I already know this stuff. I'm only doing it so that other people are aware. So look at this. Nice Catwoman. She's a cute little Hamite. That's why you just got the small nose. But she's a white Hamite. Very, very attractive woman. Who dat? That's Penguin. He has like a Khazarian type Soviet nose. Joker there is the Khazarian trickster wearing face makeup, literally because he has symptoms that require it. That's why Trump and John Kerry and I think Bush and Biden and who else? There's a lot of people who have worn the orange makeup on air. It's a ritual for them. They're Yakhtin, they're the Yokers, they're Soviets. Yoviets. Yoviets would be like the small lovers. If you look in like backstage history of like midgets in Hollywood, they're very promiscuous. It's just a known fact. You can go look it up. Anyway, Harley Quinn. Harley Quinn is a cute little white Hamite again. She is adorable. If she was like a good woman, that character of Harley Quinn is like, jeez. Anyway, and then Batman. Let's see if you can. Where does it show his face? Right here. Batman looks exactly like Clark Kent for some reason. Superman and Batman are the same thing. You understand? Anyway, and then there's oh man, look at that one. Look at that one. Do I even have to say it? That's a Cassar. They had an old king. They called him Joseph, and they want to claim that the whole Bible is actually based off that Joseph, and it's all a lie. And it's so desperate they created an anti-scripture. They had a guy named Joseph, and these Khazarians had pretended to be these people for a long time. And then they cast you out of the synagogue, right? You understand? The fake ones cast out the real ones and are like, you're a Jew. And I'm like, what? It's like, you guys look more Khazarian. Look at your noses. And you kick me out and call me a Jew. Isn't that something? Do you understand? That's why I have to say these things. It's like, hopefully the algorithm understands I'm a Semitic man critiquing Hitler as a benevolent psychopath and negative, but they appear benevolent. So I'll try to post a link to that movie, the German one, because it's on Odyssey. So I can send it. You can watch it on Odyssey. It's a German movie. So I don't know how it works, but yeah, so look at Two-Face here. He's got the black and white hair like I've been telling you. And look at, he's a bit more of the friendly Semitic look. He looks like half Batman, half Joker. You can't make this up. Black and white hair. Hillary. Oh, sorry. Harley. Harley is wearing the black and the red and the white. That's literally like making a clown out of the women who were produced out of the psychological abuse of World War II. I can't keep doing this. It's too... people need to pay attention. I'm not special. Everybody can do this. I got it through the language. Literally through the language. Oh, guess what? Scripture says the word, in the word is hidden all knowledge and wisdom and power. Look at that. You see how he makes his eyes and nose sharper and his ears sharper in his alternate identity? But his real... which one's on here? His real identity looks exactly carbon copy of Clark Kent. So, I just like doing that. It's funny. Okay, I'll show you this too. I think this is it from this part. Let me grab this. This is cool. If you can find this on Amazon or something, or one of those, someplace probably that gives Work and Joe's money. Jurassic Park and The Lost World together. This will fill your mind with all kinds of questions, and read scripture and it'll give you the answers. But I wanted to present that in the form that I've been trying to tell people that I have it in, because I've been telling you guys about that for a while. And just read it, because they're obviously speaking about humans. I went ahead a theory, in case anybody ever watches this and they have read the Hunger Games books. If it's ever insinuated anywhere that Madam President and President Snow, their hair is dyed white, would be very interesting to me. Because I have a feeling it might be secretly implied somewhere in the books. Because all the other characters have all these crazy clothes and they dye their hair because they're telling you they're trying to use clothes and hair and makeup so that people can't see their phenotypes and their, or certain emotions or their genetics. And then they tell you they're focused on their genetics, and then they tell you you can't at least perceive it. It's pretty ridiculous, isn't it? So there's a poem by Edgar Allan Poe called Alone. And I just read something. Hitler says something about something being obscuring his view when he was trying to think of this, and he was struggling. See? So let me see if I can find it in here. Oh no, I think it's imitation, isn't it? No, it's Alone. It's Alone. Alone is on page 45. Then 46 has To Isaac Leah and Elizabeth. This is very interesting. Then 47 has From an Album and Lines on Joe Locke. That's very interesting. Maybe I should read all those. Let's go to page 45 for Alone. Is it coincidence? Tell me if it's coincidence that I'm reading about Adolf Hitler, that I call Mr. Hittite. I liken him unto Trump, and it just so happens that the poem I need to read which starts off, which has the end of fairyland, the very end of fairyland. Wait. There's two fairylands? Hmm. That's interesting. But anyway, so page 45, which is when Trump first became president, is where I'm getting this poem describing what I thought of or I imagined when Hitler said that something was obstructing his view while he's meditating, and it makes a struggle in him, and he has to shave his sides of his head and his beard off and just leave a little bit of mustache. Why? Because he's hiding something, just like those characters in Hunger Games. Put makeup on, have wild visual stuff and clothes because they're trying to distract you from their Soviet heritage. It becomes a heritage when you doppelgang all these countries. You'll all look similar to each other. You won't be hidden. So here we go. This is page 45, Alone by Edgar Allan Poe. From childhood's hour, gee, how long has this spirit been oppressing him? Oh, about since childhood, it often causes him to struggle, throwing him into fire and in water. I asked your disciples to get rid of it, but they could not. Messiah points out lack of faith, and you can read the rest of that story, but let's just continue here. Alone by Edgar Allan Poe. From childhood's hour I have not known, from childhood's hour I have not been, as others were, I have not seen, as others saw, I could not bring, my passions from a common spring. From the same source I have not taken, my sorrow I could not awaken, my heart to joy at the same tone, and all I loved alone. Interesting. Does it sound familiar? This was expressed in that Much Ado About Nothing section that I read. He continues, then, emphasized, then, in my childhood, in the dawn, the W, dawn, of a most stormy life, in a most stormy Daniel's life, was drawn from every depth of good and ill the mystery which binds me still. Sierra means bind, to a lasso or a noose. Sierra Mountains, Fiera Mountains, surrounds the Caliph Fierano. Califiano. It's cute. From every depth of good and ill, the mystery which binds me still, from the torrent or the fountain, Aeon, from the red cliff of the mountain, from the sun that round me rolled in its autumn tint of gold. See, he's seeing creation, but not seeing truth in it. Let's see what happens when you don't see truth in creation. From the sun that round me rolled in its autumn tint of gold, from the lightning in the sky, as it passed me flying by, from the thunder and the storm, and the cloud that took the form, when the rest of heaven was blue, of a demon in my view. What does the demon tell him? There's no truth in creation. Why? Because they see their doom in creation. They see a heavy rain fall and a spider web is taken down and the spider washed away without mercy. And it terrifies them. You know what they sing to themselves before they go to sleep? The song of their blood. The spider, the itsy bitsy spider, the jock night spider, crawled up the water spout. Down came the rain. Baptism. And washed the spider out. Out came the sun. It's grace there. Dried up all the rain. Itsy bitsy spider walked up the spout again. But see, that doesn't always work that way. That's only like 1% of the spiders. 99% of them did not crawl back up. And that's what terrifies them. They're like, there's no truth in that. There's no truth in that. He left us. He left us. So there's the next one here on page 46. So it's 45 to 46. So in 46, the demon comes into view. Isn't that weird? And then like Biden calls Trump Dark Brandon. Did you know that Hamlet is written? I didn't know this. Hamlet is a prince of Denmark. What have I been talking about this whole time? This is freaking weird. So to Isaac Leah as he who laughs at the cow. Leah is like Leah can be a brother of a testimony, a scholar's testimony, or a lamentation testimony, or a moisture and renewal. It implies all those things. That's called the cycle of a society, from rise to fall, or expansion and introversion, if you see it dimensionally correctly. So to Isaac Leah, let's see. Oh, this is the one I've quoted a bunch of times. That's so weird. 46. Anyway, it was my choice, vote, or chance, vote, or curse, vote, vav, vav, vav. It was my choice or chance or curse to adopt the cause, for better or worse, and with my worldly goods and wit, and soul and body, worship it. Can't make this up. This should go in the transdimensional charts category, but I can't. I don't have time to clip this stuff. And not even kidding, on the end of the page 46, it's Elizabeth. Remember what I said about Elizabeth Christ? Take the Christ out, replace it with Tarampe, the exalted mouth of Rome. Like, so many things. Anyway, so let me read this one. This spills in half 46 and half 47. So if people want to say, oh, this is just coincidental, it's like, you don't know what life is. Life is so, like, the reflection of infinite dimensional, which is the fifth dimension, why you have 5 fingers, why you have dominion. The fifth dimensional is virtually infinite. That's why you have 5 fingers and virtually infinite possibilities. That's why they say that, infinite possibilities. So let's just read this mystery right here. Because Paul said something like that. All writing, all script is good for teaching and breathed out by God, meaning the truth in it is because God allowed it to be in there. That's Pharaoh's dream. That's Nebuchadnezzar's dream. Why do you think this guy writes poems saying a dream within a dream? Because he's from the same bloodline. You can't make this up. 34th minute mark here. Elizabeth. So let me start this. So it's Elizabeth by Edgar Allan Poe. Elizabeth, it surely is most fit, logic and common usage so commanding, in thine own book that first thy name be writ. Zeno, here's a note here, was saying of this philosopher that one's own name should never appear in one's own book. Zeno, remember, is Zana. But I think it's not Zana. I think it's when it's Zeno, it's kind of like Zen. I'd look into that because I'm going to forget after this, so you guys can look into it. So in thine own book that first thy name be writ. So maybe it's mocking like a prideful thing. This person is doing what common philosophy says you shouldn't, write your name in your own book. So maybe this is like a Trump and Hitler thing, Stalin, all those guys. They're all the same. They're all just benevolent psychopaths, aren't they? So, in thy own book that first thy name be writ, Zeno and other sages notwithstanding, and I have other reasons for so doing, besides my innate love of contradiction. Very interesting. Each poet, if a poet, in pursuing, the muses through their bowers of truth or fiction, this is page 47 now, that last line, has studied very little of his part, nothing wrong, written less, in short's a fool. He's literally talking about right now. People who aren't doing their research on this treasure trove of knowledge compiled over thousands of years. They treat it like nothing. He continues, endued with neither soul nor sense nor art, so they're a fart. Being ignorant of one important rule employed in even the thesis of the school, called, I forgot the heathenish Greek name, called anything, its meaning is the same, always write first things uppermost in the heart. That's weird. It sounds like he's referencing the Greco-Romanization of Messiah's name from Hebrew. That was an interesting line. Try it one more time. Being ignorant of one important rule employed even in the thesis of the school, called, I forgot the heathenish Greek name, called anything, its meaning is the same, always write first things uppermost in the heart. That's very interesting. So let me read this too. This is page 47. This is very interesting to me. From an Album is what it's called, by Edgar Allan Poe. And it's to Elizabeth again. Look at that. Elizabeth, that's the oath of the seven. That's the completed oath to God. Are you it's Shemiramoth. Are you going to hear and live? Or are you going to hear and be in the city? And I'm going to hear the death of the city. That's what Shemiramoth means, that I hear the city dying. But the city implies those who are terrified and stripped away. Why? Through fear. Fiarun, Pharaoh. Can't make this up. So from an album by Edgar Allan Poe. Elizabeth, it is in vain you say, love not, thou sayest, it in so sweet a way. In vain those words from thee or L-E-L, Xanthippes' talents had enforced so well. That's Zana, Ta, Pe. Ah, O brother, if that language from thy heart arise, breathe it less gently forth, and veil thine eyes. Endymion, recollect, when Luna tried to cure his love, was cured of all beside, his folly, pride, and passion, for he died. Wow. Can't make this up. So, do you want to delve more into this mystery? Because this last poem is the last part of page 47, and it's very short, and it's the last part on the page. The next page is another poem. So this is the end of 47 here. Lines on Joe Locke. Joe Biden, lock her up. There's weird stuff going on here. Joe Locke. That's the lock up grace, by the way. Or grace or abundance. So this is Lines on Joe Locke, with an E at the end of Locke, by Edgar Allan Poe. 40-minute mark here. As for Locke, he is all in my eye. May the something, because it's missing a line. Some of these are Edgar Allan Poe poems that weren't published because they're like a word they couldn't was missing or something. So let me read it again. As for Locke, he is all in my eye. May the something that starts with D and ends with L, might be a name, right soon for his soul call. He never was known to lie in bed at Revile roll call. And it's lie like in lie down, I think. John Locke was a notable name. Joe Locke is a greater and short. The former was well known to fame, but the latter's well known to report. Interesting. One actually has fame, that's Messiah. The other one's just a reporter, making apprentices. You know what a reporter is? It's an agent. Agent of Gog is Magog. MAGA, Make America Great Again. That's just really weird. How do you explain that? Like, oh, it's just a coincidence. It's like, why does God make a coincidences exist? Is it not to show you something? Because he doesn't need to see anything. So if something happens visibly, if something happens in a pattern, if a coincidence like this happens with the page numbers coinciding with the presidential numbers, it's meant for teaching something. Do you understand? It's a mentality. It's a psychology. So let's see how much of this other guy's struggle we can input into all this that I just presented. And then I might eat something or I might not. And do part 2 at 3:30 just to be funny. Do the third installment at 3:30 or at 4 o'clock. But I do 4 installments at a time with this. The first 2 times and the last one's 3. So it comes out to sets of 11. This is all to build something. I want you to see how these numbers just naturally form. I don't pre-plan this. I don't have enough notes just come at random points of the day. I write them on here just like this, crudely and often misspelled. So let's see. I don't even know what page this is. 57. Oh, it is 57. Great. But anyway, it's because I knew I stopped at 55 on the end of the last one. But that's just being smart. I don't even know what he's going to talk about. I just know that because he started mentioning the J's, that it's going to perfectly transition the Romeo and Juliet into the next section, which will be, what was it? Machiavellian Paradise Lost. And then I'm going to have to make up new titles after that. Because I only have 3 at the moment, I think. Archetypal Dynamics will just be like a shorter video, maybe like a half hour to 20-minute video I can do later. So let's see. Let me just repeat the last line from here from Mr. Hittite. 44-minute mark while we're starting this, and that's takes 44 minutes to actually get to the book in some sections. So Mr. Hittite says, I was even more disgusted at the way in which this same Vienna press salaamed obsequiously before the meanest steed belonging to the Habsburg royal equipage, and went off into wild ecstasies of delight if the nag wagged its tail in response. So remember how I said when he speaks like that, he's directly speaking to his distant relatives. Not that distant, though. See, he's like a step son or step cousin or something of these people, and he's mad because they get to be at the high up table and he's in Hades guiding the dead. He doesn't like that job. Nobody likes that job, so they complain. Napoleon did the same thing. He doesn't like being Hades, so he's like, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to literally inseminate all your women. And that's what he did. And they might have let him do that because they wanted the real passion, so they didn't tell him it was part of the plan. They're just like, oh, let's see if he'll want to do that, and then we'll just let him do that. And he might be able to refresh all of our bloodlines because he's half Sicilian and half Soviet. I wish that Seinfeld theme song music just started playing right now, but I don't have that ability. Okay, so he continues. At the same time, these newspapers took up an attitude of anxiety in matters that concerned the German emperor, trying to cloak their enmity by the serious air they gave themselves. Not familiar at all, but in my eyes, that enmity appeared to be only poorly cloaked. Naturally, they protested that they had no intention of mixing in Germany's internal affairs. God forbid. They pretended that by touching a delicate spot in such a friendly way, they were fulfilling a duty that devolved upon them by reason of the mutual alliance between the two countries. Devolution, devolve. Very interesting that it mentions a word that's related to that. Countries, and that at the same time discharging their obligations of journalistic truthfulness. Having thus excused themselves about tenderly touching a sore spot, they bored with the finger ruthlessly into the wound. You can choose which parts you think are truth or not. Because remember, he's a psychologist. He's compiling information. He's like an AI. He's using his fourth dimension in a way where he probably perceives himself as a god. That's what all these people end up doing. Marcus Aurelius, Kaisers, all these people. So the czars, all the Soviets think this way. And then, what would a Soviet do if he learned enough? If he noticed enough of the patterns in scripture? Well, he might just pretend to be of those people genetically. Isn't that something? That's what a benevolent psychopath would do. Anyway, that sort of thing, continues Mr. Hittite, made my blood boil. He's not in control of his emotions. Very Hamitic. And now I began to be more and more on my guard when reading the Great Vienna Press. Hitler's chimping out. I had to acknowledge, however, that on such subjects, such and such, shush and shush, such and such, it's like a spell, right? A hex. You can't remember their name. They're such and such. They're shush and shush. 66? Can't make this up. Anyway. I had to acknowledge, however, that on such subjects, one of the anti-Semitic papers, the Deutsche Volksblatt, acted more decently. You see how anti-Semitism is, in a way, repugnant to anybody? Why? Because it's a third of the freaking world. It's like you have two siblings and you allow one to be hated by everybody. That if you allow it. You know what I mean? That's what it's like. Yeah, even this guy in his book, he might be doing this as a cloak. But yeah, it's not decent to anybody. So people who very, very vehemently participate in it, thinking they're only talking about this little group of people, it's like, no, Semites are a third of the entire world. They claim there's between 7 and 9 billion people. A third or more are Semitic. It's a lot of people. Shouldn't have to, point that out. Let's see. What got still more on my nerves, says Mr. Hittite, was the repugnant And see, Hittites anciently used to respect Abraham. The sons of Heth, they buried his wife. They said he was like a prince of Elohim amongst the nations. So you see how even his view here is genetically emphasized in his body. He's like, it's repugnant to him. There must be a truth here. But you see how something poisoned him. He could have even not known about certain things because his two right hand men, I think Heinrich Himmler and the other guy, were both Knights of Malta. And I think it was Groening or Himmler who would actually talk about the extermination the most. So people don't understand the dynamics of how this works. He can do half the evil and still be condemned for it, and then not even know about the other half. Because Knights of Malta take oaths where you might not even have known these people were Knights of Malta. But then again, Hitler himself could have been a secret Knight of Malta. Do you understand? But his genetics are even telling him this is repugnant. Your ancient genetics of Hittite are telling you, yeah, Abraham was like a prince of Elohim. So there must be more truth to this. But the Hittites ended up working for Egypt. They were the terrorizers of Egypt. They were the merchant. They were the Marines. Sorry, not merchant. They were the Marines. And the Amalekites were like the Navy. Anyway. What got still more on my nerves was the repugnant manner in which the big newspapers cultivated admiration for France. They worship Pharaoh's Ankh. Frank. The testimony of Frank? Anna? Okay, one really had to feel ashamed of being a German when it continues Mr. Hittite. This is his words. Remember, there's a critique of Mein Kampf. Hitler is a benevolent psychopath. He is a sorcerer. Being a German when confronted by those mellifluous. This man just said a German word that translates into English. Mellifluous. Come, who are these people? Maybe maybe this is Murphy, Mr. SS Officer Murphy here. Maybe this is his fault. Maybe this isn't even. I don't. It's just really annoying. Mellifluous. Come on, bro. You're supposed to be talking to the people, not some like. Not a like a Plato or something. Like somebody who, like not a person who understands language. You're speaking to just regular everyday Joes, and you want to say things like mellifluous. You say that when you're trying to argue with like Jordan Peterson or something. Not talking to regular Joes. This is what irritates me about this book. So, being a German, when confronted by those mellifluous hymns of praise for the great culture nation, he says, this wretched Gallomania. Interesting. It's not called Gaul, Mr. Hittite. It's called Frank. The Franks are the Romans of the Gauls. Kaiser genocided the Gauls. You have the gall to tell me that? You understand? Gulls would point stuff out. Now they call these birds seagulls. Oh, they're so annoying. Do you understand what real racism is? I'll show it to you. It's in here. He calls them it's Francomania. Why isn't he saying Francomania? Because he comes from Frank. You understand? He's not Saxton. He's not a true German. He's some Austrian Soviet. I need someone older and wiser telling me what to do. I don't realize this boy's gonna be a Nazi and he might think I'm a Jew when I'm not. You know what I mean? Like they could just be labeled as Jews and then being taken care of. That's how this stuff actually happens. When the AI is released to mark people as Semites, it's going to make tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, possibly millions of mistakes. Do you understand? It's a sacrifice they're willing to make. Literally in front of Saudi billionaires at an event called Route 91 Harvest, in front of a giant black pyramid called the Luxor. 55-minute mark. Strictly business, isn't it, Mr. Trump? Strictly business. Okay, let's see. He continues. This wretched Gallomania, more often than once, made me throw away one of those world newspapers. It's very apish, isn't it? Apish behavior, Mr. Hitler. Aren't you supposed to be the master race? Aren't you supposed to be like a master your own dominion or something like that? I now often turned to the Volksblatt, which was much smaller in size, but which treated such subjects more decently. I was not in accord with its sharp anti-Semitic tone, but again and again I found that its arguments gave me grounds for serious thought. This is like the Goyim TV type. Do you understand? He's trying to attract a certain people. There were already actors out there in these newspapers. There's people that have already they had already done studies on them secretly, or maybe they do a random poll, some random thing, and they just innocently fill it out or something, or answer their questions. What do you think of this? What do you think of that? While they're buying the newspaper, do you understand? He saw how some arguments have utility, and then he could be making this whole story up again. Remember, I said there could be a whole round table of psychologists behind this book. But I've met people who have the ability to write books like this. I could probably write a book like this. It's just, I don't need to. I like speaking. Speaking is always better. Okay, so he continues. Anyhow, it was as a result of such reading that I came to know the man and the movement, which then determined the fate of Vienna. These were Dr. Karl Lueger and the Christian Socialist movement. At the time I came to Vienna, I felt opposed to both. I looked on the man and the movement as reactionary. But even an elementary sense of justice forced me to change my opinion, he says, his opinion, when I had the opportunity of knowing the man and his work. And slowly that opinion grew into outspoken admiration. He wants you to do this to him, but I've already pointed out in this book where he shouldn't get that admiration. When I had better grounds for forming a judgment. Today, as well as then, Hitler says, he holds Dr. Karl Lueger as the most eminent type of German Burgermeister. And I don't know who this guy was. He could have been a good guy. I don't know. It's just like Trump talking about Manly P. Hall. Great Manly P. Hall. Great. Tim, let me do this really feminine thing where I just kind of like touch your shoulder or something. Or I just like point at you as if I'm touching your shoulder spiritually. Like, get out of here. He continues, how many prejudices were thrown over through such a change in my attitude towards the Christian Socialist movement? Because the Christian Socialist movement, it would sound like, would capture people with my spiritual mentality at first. I've already figured some things out where they wouldn't be able to recruit me now. But, you know, about 10 years ago, 15 years ago, maybe a Christian Socialist movement might have been very appealing to me. You understand? This is who he's fishing for. We're supposed to be fishers of men, right? So the false church is also going to be fishers of men. You understand? We're commanded to do a lot of things that the wicked also do. Why? Because it's successful. That's it. It's a means to an end. Just one have a different means. The other have the opposite usually. And then there's some in the middle that have black and white hair. Or there's Sergeant Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band, because it's so intermixed, and they're confused and they're just depressed all the time. So he continues, my ideas about anti-Semitism changed also in the course of time, but that was the change which I found most difficult. Why? Because your Hittite self is telling you Abraham is a prince of Elohim. We buried his wife. What are you doing? I'm serious. His blood is literally telling him that. Don't do it. You're about to kill Abraham. We buried his wife. We honor him. Stop it. He continues, it cost me a greater internal conflict. Oh. With myself. Is that by design? Do they want to take people like me and try to make me hate myself, literally? Or somebody who my ancestors honored? Uh, that is it meant to cause internal conflicts? Can people get a stressed appendix because of it? I wonder. Uh, it cost me a greater internal conflict within myself, he says, and it was only after a struggle between reason and sentiment, whatever that means to him, sentiment. Because sometimes these people just use words to draw away from a true answer. It cost me a greater internal conflict with myself, and it was only after a struggle between reason and sentiment that victory began to decide in favor of the former. So, 2 years later, sentiment rallied to the side of reasons and became a faithful guardian and counselor. See, it's very clouded. I bet you I'm not understanding it a lot. Somebody who mindlessly worships this guy might just interpret it in a good way, though. You see how it's kind of confusing for a Semite, but a non-Semite, they might just go, oh, like Buddha or something. Like, yeah, I understood exactly what you said, Master. Oh. So he continues so I could finish this page here. At the time of this bitter struggle between calm reason and the sentiments in which I had been brought up, be clearer. You're speaking to townsfolk. It's annoying. The lessons that I learned on the streets of Vienna rendered me invaluable assistance. It's funny how he kind of even seems like I'm on the streets of Vienna. I'm just a vagabond. It's like Vienna is a palace. A time came when I no longer passed blindly along the street of the mighty city, as I had done in the early days, but now with my eyes open not only to study the buildings, but also the human beings. Interesting. So, this man literally has a similar background of all these people I try to mention. That young man in Gaza that I said I joked looked like a browner version than me. His two brothers, who they're supposed to be triplets, his brothers look very interesting. One exactly like one of my friends, and the other like somebody who came along, and he was the son of that ISIS, the guy who created ISIS. John Georgios or something created ISIS, and this is his son. Both raised in the U.S., both raised as Christian, and then converted to Islam and went and created a system that 90% of its fatalities were Muslim. Isn't that interesting? And then this kid wants to start like boxing and wrestling stuff, acting like he's ignorant of what it is. And if you are ignorant of that stuff, people can get very, very injured. And then you can just play the victim card like, oh, I didn't know. But you're intentionally getting these people to hurt themselves and each other. It is very intricate like that. Evil is very intricate for its pursuit of committing more evil. It's just how it works, unfortunately. So, this son of the one who created ISIS, his name is Mikhailis Georgios. He says he likes Hitler, but he doesn't like Nazis. Do you understand that these people, he took a trip to Greece, just like Hitler took a trip to Vienna. Do you understand? And then they're wowed with this stuff. They think they're some kind of vagabond when they're actually just rich. Filthy, filthy rich. And their grandpas and stuff are military commanders high up in the US. And their sons start ISIS. And their grandsons basically worship their benevolent psycho fathers. Kevin Spacey's dad used to dress up like Hitler. Go a picture of Kevin Spacey's dad. There's other people who look like that. Can't make this up. We live in a very strange world. Very strange realm. So, let me just start this music to end this section. I'll be back in a bit. Probably 3:30 maybe. makes me feel a little better. Let's see. Picking a song here.
Alright, all you groovy, tuned in, turned on way out fans, here's a sample of your kind of music, Strange Brew.